Alright, so here's a quick tutorial on something that I saw on a prior tutorial. A request to explain how these titles were done. Let's see, where was there? Are those text all animated in Howler? Alright, so I'm not sure exactly what text this poster was talking about. I suppose probably the ones at the beginning here, where you see an animation dropping down, another one here, different text, and then easing in, and then eventually disappearing. I don't remember how, maybe fading. Oh no, it's sort of a scaling out or something like that. So I'm not sure that we can do the exact same thing, but there are quite a number of tricks you can play for titles. There's another one here at the end, and this one is perhaps the one he was talking about, where you see a bunch of text items coming up. Let me scale forward to that here. Coming up here any second. There you go. Alright, so that kind of implosion or swarming together. Well, we don't have an easy way to do that precisely with just 1 or 2 clicks, but I suppose you could animate each letter. And it would be very tedious to do this, right? But it's not totally impossible. Let's say that's not what we're talking about. I mean, the swarming together is one thing. Another thing is just to have some text there and maybe disappear or fade it. And so what I wanted to do is show that a little bit. Here's another example. Let me turn the preview off. And let's say we have an animation we want to do that's a little bit like this. Hold on, let me play it. There's a little bit of a ghosting, you notice. So there's some animation in the background, and then there's text coming in from the top, staying there for a little while, and then eventually swifting or flying away out to the side. And there's also this ghosting thing where you actually see two kind of copies separate and come back together. And of course, you might arrange it in such a way that you don't see them separate. They might, for instance, appear already fully solid from the top, out of frame, and then only gradually come together at the bottom. So you will just see one and the second one, and that's it. In fact, you can have a whole bunch of them, one after another. So there's a variety of different tricks that you might want to play here, and I wanted to kind of show you some of the techniques to do that. So one thing to have, of course, as a starting point is an animation in the background, although that's not even necessary if you want to just practice, right? But I do have an animation here that I will probably use for the background. But again, don't be discouraged if you don't have that. You can certainly erase the whole thing to background, clear all frames to whatever the background color is. Oop, that's pink. I don't want that, or something like that. Let's go right-click to make the secondary color black, and then erase clear to black there. All right, so all frames are black, and I'm going to use the text tool right here. And in the text tool, you get to select, initially it's probably a small box like this. You get to place it where you want, you get to grab the lower right corner, and you get to select the font parameters here. Select the font you want to use. Let's get something different here. Select also if you want it underlined, italics, boldface. Some of the fonts don't show you bold effect. Select the size of it too. And let's see, from outer space, let's use this. Now this one's too big, so we need to make this a little bit smaller, and let's go something like this here. And I apologize for all this noise in the background here. we have some amount of text here. Let's see if we can find one that we really like. From outer space. Let's see, does this appear different in, yeah, boldface. No, let's just grab one there, from outer space. Let's give it some underline. Strike through, no, but underline is nice. Let's do something like this. All right, so that would be one text item. It could be more complex, add a few more lines. In fact, let's do this. Let's go right click and to grab the box corner to show. There you go, from outer space. All right, so something like this. And now we make this into a brush. So one of the items you see in the context bar here is to make it into a brush. And in fact, before you do that, you may want to select the color. Let's select the light blue and then make this into a brush. Right. So if you click the PRV, the preview for the custom brushes, you see now that this text has been put into a brush image, and you can store that to grab a sort of a snapshot of this. You can also do a few more things, and one of them in particular is perhaps to add an outline, sort of a border around it. Let's make it, let's see, yellow. Right. So I want to add this yellow. That's a left click. I think that's the one we need to use. Let's go double check that. Go to Brush Transparency and grow it. That's growing or key shrink. Key grow, and as you do that you see nothing happening here. So let's use a shortcut instead. Where is it at? Transparency, key grow, still nothing, which means it's probably adding the black color, the secondary. So let's do that. Let's right click on yellow, or let's do white. Okay, so we know which one is which, because if both of them are yellow, who do we know? How do we know which one is really taken? It's the right. It seems like it's going to be the right click. Let's see, what color might be good. Maybe a purplish. Yeah, let's do that. That's odd. So let's take any different color with the with the right button for the secondary color. And now, so this time we'll use again a keyboard shortcut. Should do, or if you use brush transparency key grow, it still doesn't do it, and so that's interesting. And I have the right color now, the secondary color black. Okay, so is it really taking that? I don't know. Shift. I need to use shift. There you go. That's not it. I am definitely not getting the effect I thought I would be getting here. What am I doing wrong? I am, ooh, look at that, I do have a border now around that. So it did pick a black color, but why is it not showing the one I wanted? Okay, let's do this again. I missed something here, evidently. So let's go erase this to black. Let's go create a new text tool from outer space. Something like this. There you go. And make brush. There. Okay, so it is this primary color that it grabs for that initial color. And then if I go to brush transparency key grow, now I'm getting a little bit of purple there, I think. So let's use a shift. There you go. So now it's showing that growing, and shift close parentheses, or not parentheses, but square bracket, curly brace basically, is going to make it a little bit smaller. So I have a text here, not very clean, not very pretty, but it's what I got with this. I'm going to say I want to animate this, right? So the way to animate this is to use it, since it's in a brush, use the animation and the brush keyframer. Right. So with the brush keyframer, first of all, we can get rid of this preview. We don't need this here anymore. Let's go turn the preview off. So now we have the brush keyframer, and the way this works is that you can grab the current get brush. Well, it already loads it when you initially launch it, but let's say if you keep it around and you change the brush, you can get the brush into the brush keyframe to get the latest copy here. And what we do want to do, you notice these dots here, that's the path that I had in a prior experiment. So I'm going to clear that. I'm going to go right here, clear all keyframes. And then I'm going to navigate here at the scroll bar, going to the left. And actually I'm going to think, well, what is the path I want to do for this animation? One thing that I'd like to do really is kind of have it drop from the top outside into here and stay there for a little while before it whisks away to the right, and also or maybe I'm going to have it rotate, right, have some spinning, change the scale, all sorts of different ideas here that you could easily implement. And what I'll do is let's say initially set the angle to 0, something like this. And okay, so I'm going to need to have it move down and eventually stay here. So the idea is that I should probably say where along the timeline I want that, right? And I want the linear motion so that it doesn't do, well, it's a little bit more predictable as to where it is at which point in time. Although a nonlinear transition is pretty neat too, except the very last frame it kind of catches up. There's some rounding errors or something with this integer arithmetic. So let's try that. Doesn't matter. We can go and say, okay, it's going to go here at this point in time and keyframe that. And then it's going to stay for a while and perhaps till about here and not move much, but then it's going to suddenly kind of shrink away and fade away the opacity as well. Right, so we can go change the scale. It doesn't have to go to 0 altogether, but we could also spin it a few times, keep turning this, or maybe spin the other way and fade the opacity off and keyframe that. All right, now let's bring the opacity back for some other things here. It might not do that until you insist on it here, but also bring the angle back to where it was before, and that would be 0. There you go. And get the scale back. Now it would be good to actually notice what was the scale initially, right? And now put the position. So you need to look for that dot that indicates the center of the brush's bounding box. And so grab this dot and kind of move this up a little bit. Now I'm going to intentionally not be perfectly vertically above it. I'm going to go a little bit too much to the left. And then you'll notice what happens. I get this path that's not quite vertical. Also, I messed up because I didn't do that at the right point. I should actually have done this a little bit further on the left side. So this keyframe here I need to remove. Now it's a little bit tricky because you have, you need to determine where exactly on that path is it that you're pointing at this red tick mark here for the keyframe. So if you're a little bit too much to the right, you might miss it, or you might be dead on. Try that, see if you can remove it. Nope, that's not it. So let's try the one before that. Bingo, that did it. Alright, so what you want to do now is go all the way to the left and still keep this thing up here. Somewhere around there, keyframe that. So now you have a path coming down, and it comes like this, and boom, and then it starts turning. Now you notice how it first shoots out and then turns the other way. Right, so that's the thing you want to avoid. And what you really should do is kind of notice what are the parameters for this in terms of position, scale, angle, and opacity. Scale is 100, angle is 0. So you see if you can bring it earlier into the timeline and still bring it to the same position as well. Keep it here, keep it at 100, something like that. And you know what, sometimes it doesn't even matter if it's precisely that. Call it art instead of predictable graphic. and just keyframe that. So now we have a little bit of movement, but still so little that we can actually read exactly where it's going. Now you notice this little overshoot and undertow, or whatever you want to call it. It's kind of a interpolation side effect because we're not doing this in linear mode. If we go linear, then you have a little bit more of a predictable, subdued activity. But it's also sudden when it starts moving, right? A bit more robotic. Now, let's see if we can improve that. If we go to the very first frame, you notice it's not in the right place, right? We need to move it a little bit to the right so that this point will be more vertically above it. Keyframe that. Now, we might have gone too much or not enough. That's okay. Let's go do the next thing. Let's bring this window down a little bit and bring it up even higher, right? Even outside of the window, right? And keyframe that. So now the animation will start without the text in there, and only at some point does it blend in here. Now maybe you'll want to have it coming in really fast. So this place where it is showing right now should not be appearing at this point in time. It should be appearing much earlier, right? So what you want to do is actually have it around here, right? but really at this point in time. So go into this point in time and bring it down here. You have this reference line here. You can easily aim it and place the cursor around there. Click it. So now it comes down here very quickly and then kind of slows down. So you see this motion, boom, and then it slows down. Now, if that's too sudden, you could do this in 1 or 2 more steps. All right, so give it perhaps halfway here until so it slows down a little bit, and then halfway here again and slows down even more. But you know, this entire animation is going to go so fast anyway, so who can tell really. Another thing you could do also is not keep it fully opaque at the beginning. For instance, bring it down to 0 transparency. And so that way when it comes in, it kind of fades in. You see how initially it's not fully opaque, and then it gradually comes in there and the eye adjusts to it, and we start reading. We've got it, boom, and then it goes away. All right, so once we've done this kind of animation sequence, it's time to render it. Do that, and we have a first render. And the things you could do now is just say, okay, that's it, I'm done. Or you could say, well, let's see what else we can do with that. Right? This is a cute little animation, maybe not that sophisticated, but it took a little bit of creativity to get to it. The next thing we could do is just mess with this a little bit more. And one of them is, for instance, to work on the way that the brush is actually applied here. Right? The default one was a replace mode or an opaque mode, and you could do an XOR to do all sorts of funky side effects here. You could do a subtractive, you could do, I don't know, screen mode, divide mode, and sometimes that will create some really interesting, really good, desirable effects. What I'd like to do now is actually not do any of that, but instead just keep it still in the opaque mode, but give it a little bit of an offset. And what I mean is, I want a ghost copy of that same text to appear floating behind it. And eventually when the first one is slowing down to come to a stop, right, just around here, the other one will have followed up a short time after that as well. And so one way to do that is to just re-render it, but first give it a few more frames, or delete us a few of the frames, right? Because right now here it still remembers the entire path, and will render that from this frame to the next one and so on. Well, but if you insert a few frames first, if you go to, you know, these, if you go to the very first frame and then just keep pressing the insert a frame, it duplicates that frame a few times. Let's do it 5 times. There, I have now 5 more frames right at the beginning. And if I render this again, you now see sort of a ghosting of that animation. You can see it now as you play back. Right here you have 2 instances of this, right? And then when the first instance right here is slowing down, the other one hasn't slowed down yet. It's not at that stage yet. So it's catching up right there, right? And then they kind of come into the same sequence. And right there they kind of overlap as well. So that will happen too. And so you can repeat this. You can do this a few times. Let's go back to the first frame once more. And this time add, I don't know, click this 10, 15 times and get a really strange, a wickedly strange additional set of frames. And so when you click render, it's got a really latecomer right there. You know, so you now have even more impressive. Oops, hold on, let me move this to the side. You now have 3 ghost images, right? Let's say we thought maybe we had too many. Let's go and remove some of those. So we can go and delete maybe 5 of the frames. Remember, we got 15 additional frames here. Maybe we delete a few now. So I'm going to go from here, set the in marker, go about here, set the out marker. That will select this entire block. Right click on this block and say delete block, right? And that now, if we go and render on top of that, we just have yet another sequence. I think now we have 4 ghost images here, right? And this is really starting to become very unique, very interesting, and you know, opens up a whole set of, you know, stacking animations or something like that. Let's do one more. Let's see what happens if we delete more frames than we initially had. Now I've deleted so many, I've inserted so many, I'm going to go and delete from here to about here. All right, so set the in marker, set the out marker, and delete that. And so now the animation looks a little bit deprived, unfortunately. Right, so that was not a good idea. Oh wait, I didn't render that yet. So let's go and render it right there. Okay, well, still, it's probably better if you keep adding rather than deleting. You know, you go play with that. There's tons of other ideas. So you could recycle them. You could have some of these images at the very end come back to the beginning. You know, for instance, let's do that just for fun. Let's grab about here, or when the rotation starts, just around here. There, from this frame, let's go in and go to the last. Let's go out. So now we have this entire section here, quite a number of frames. Right click that, and instead of deleting them, we'll cut the block. So that entire set of frames is cut into sort of a clipboard. Let's go to the beginning and insert it in front of that. So right click here and insert the block before the current frame. And that, of course, will create something yet again really wicked. And we are almost done. There you go. So now we already have a messy type of animation here. But you know, messy is good. So one thing we'll do here one more time is render that same path, always the same path. But then again, of course, why? You could also change that if you needed to, right? So here's a really unique, very different type of text, you know, and hopefully that will give you some ideas of stuff to try that are difficult to predict in the outcome, but you know, maybe you'll like it and others won't. So have fun exploring text tools with PD Howler, and we'll talk to you soon.